Welcome everyone to Coffee with a Codex. My name is Dot Porter and I am a curator in the Kislak Center for Special Collections, Rare Books, and Manuscripts at the University of Pennsylvania Libraries. I split my time with the Kislak Center and the Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies, which is a research and development institute in the Kislak Center. And so I work with manuscripts. I do a lot of digital work. I love working with video because you can see things in video that you can't see in still images. So that's one of the reasons I do this Coffee with a Codex, which is my weekly program. Once a week, I take a book off the shelf and bring it out and show it to you. And it's pretty fun. So my colleague Amy Hutchins is here. She is our manuscripts cataloger. She will be keeping her eye on the chat. I keep my eye on the chat. If you have questions as we go through, don't hesitate to type them in and we'll answer them as we can. The usual caveat that I often pull out books that I am not an expert on. And this one is a great example. This is a 18th century manuscript. I am a medievalist. This is about sort of magic, which I don't really know much about, but it's such a neat manuscript. So we're going to look through it. So without further ado, here we are. This is a pretty recent addition to our collection. The shelf mark, yes, is MS Codex 1673. You know, it's pretty recent or more recent because it has a bigger number. If it has a smaller number, it means we got it longer ago. So it's pretty recent. It is 18th century, sort of the last half of the 18th century. We think between 1750 and 1799. But the text inside it actually has a really interesting, I was looking into it. It has sort of an interesting thing. I just want to point out it's, the binding is contemporary. So it is also a sort of last half of the 18th century binding. It's got these silk ties that have sort of come apart. It's not clear if it's original, but it's definitely the right time. So it could be original. And it's got this paper and it has a kind of blind stamping or some kind of decoration in there it looks like it's faded a little bit, but it has sort of a circular thing here. So that's sort of, you can see it maybe better on the back. So there's the back there. So let's take a look inside. The text is, in English, the Key of Solomon. And there are apparently many different versions of this text. So it's not clear exactly which version this is, but interestingly, so it's in 2 books. So here's the start of book 1. This version, it looks like it was a Latin that was translated from Hebrew by this person, Abraham, who lived in the sort of mid, or I guess late 16th century. So this person translated this Latin text from Hebrew, and then it was copied a few times until it ended up in this copy. But the original text of the Key of Solomon, as far as I can tell, was either written in Latin or Italian. So it looks like what we have is a text that was translated into Hebrew and then later translated back out, which seems kind of interesting, an interesting way to go. So this is a sort of decorative title page for this first book of the 2 books in this text. This has been cut out and pasted in. So if I zoom in a little bit, you can see down here the line. This was not drawn or anything in this book. It was actually cut and pasted, a little bit of art, clip art, real life clip art. I can't think of what the term is there. And then there's this colorful paper that's been, again, pasted on top of that with the handwritten title. And we're going to see more of this colorful paper as we go in. I also want to point out this stamp, which we'll be seeing a lot more of. I believe this is the stamp of the collector. So this is part of the Charles Rainsford collection, which is a collection that we bought that included this book and I can't remember how many others, lots of other books that we sort of were able to purchase them all together, which was pretty exciting. And if you look on the links, that's the blog post is about the collection. So the first book begins with an index, which is basically like a table of contents. So we can see right up front all of the sort of topics that are included in here. And I didn't translate all of them, but we have on the days and hours of the planets. So we're sort of starting with a little bit of astrology, probably. On the arts, on the form of a circle, which will become important later. And also it's on page 6, which has been torn out, interestingly. So we'll see that when we get there. We have prayers and conjurations, so conjuring spirits, different conjurations. So we have a stronger conjuration and then a very strong conjuration, depending on how strong you want to do. We have candlesticks and torches. We have then a series of sort of experiments, which are spells. So we have, there's one about a love charm in a fruit. We have a spell about destroying your enemies. So it's sort of covering a lot of ground. So that's what the contents are for. The text is written by at least 2 hands. So if I'll go back and forth, you can see, even if you can't read Latin, these are 2 very different hands that have been writing this. So we have whoever this person is, very nice script actually, writing book 1. So each chapter has a chapter number and then a header, and then it's very nicely written. So I have put in a couple of things to sort of point out where some of these are. Then at some points, we have words and other headers that are sort of written in another script that's a little neater. So going back and forth. And this is something we see in a lot of manuscripts, medieval and otherwise, that you're using a different script to sort of bring out the fact that this is something special that we're doing. It's like the equivalent of italicization or something. And this actually is where page 6 has been pulled out here. So you can see there's a little stub that has a little teeny bit of writing that we can see here. And the numbering at the top right is original numbering. So we go straight from 5 to 6, which is another way that we know it. Also, this manuscript has catchwords at the bottom of every verso page. So this is the word that will start the next page. And in this case, this is quo in, and there is no quo at the top. So that's another cue that there's something missing. So I'll skip ahead. So this is the page where we start the Conjuration series. I just thought this was sort of interesting. So we can see the first Conjuration and Conjuro, all of these different examples there. And here we have the stronger, or the strong conjuration, and then we'll have the stronger one. So we've got that, and then I'll skip back a little bit more. Here we have the fruit charm, and we've got the second, or the first actually, scribe again. So we are skipping back. This one scribe wrote several of the chapters of the book, and then the other one picks it up. Thinking as, I'm always sort of thinking about how the book was written, and it's interesting to me that we have this scribe on the front side of the page, and then you turn it over and the other one is writing on the other side of the page, as opposed to it being totally separate, which implies to me that there was some kind of collaboration between these two, a sort of close collaboration where they were passing this book back and forth potentially to be writing it. There is this other section here, which might be another scribe. It's definitely not this one, and it might not be the other one. So that's sort of interesting too. So there's potentially multiple people working on this at the same time. And remember, they would have been copying an existing text. So they're not actually translating it as they go. They're copying it from somewhere else. Here's the hatred and destruction of enemies. I just thought that was sort of a fun one. So I wanted to be sure to get that. And then we're at the end of book one, and that's followed by this sequence of sacred pentacles. So as I say, I'm not an expert in magic, but my understanding is the pentacle is sort of an important part of doing the spell. And so these are things that you might copy or in some way engage with if you were going to do the spells. And from a book history point of view, they're kind of interesting because we've got this colored paper. So we've got yellow paper and sort of red paper here. And the pentacles have been, if you can see on this side, there's been a circle that has been cut out of the page. And then the pentacle has been pasted onto the front. And so there's a sort of, instead of just being pasted onto the paper, I don't know why you would cut it out. There might be a reason for that, but I think that's sort of interesting. So each pentacle has sort of a description at the bottom here. It isn't clear to me if they are keyed to the spells in any way or if they're sort of a separate thing. Elizabeth is asking, I wonder if people cut them out and used them in ritual. I don't know. Maybe so. It's kind of hard to tell. These seem pretty solid. I was going to stick my fingernail under there. I'm not actually going to do that. Yes. Elizabeth also says, my understanding is that pentacles could also be engraved in metal. That would be pretty neat. We actually have another manuscript that has pentacles that were written on black paper that actually fell out. So they're separate, written in red on black paper, which is like very distinctive kind of looking. Claire asks if there was a volvel component. So a volvel, for those of you who don't know, is like a movable diagram. They're often used in astronomy where you have planets moving. So you'll have pieces sort of put together with pins and you can move them around. I don't know enough to know if there was any sort of movement that you might want to do for this. Ooh, that's very interesting. I just think these are very interesting. And again, this has been digitized. And so if you want to get a closer look at some of these, I invite you to go to the website and see that. So these are nice. And I assume also that these are, that if we looked at a lot of other books of this text and other books like this, we would see a lot of the same pentacles, that these are sort of accepted versions of that. Oh, good. I'm also looking at the text that's written there, and I'm not sure, that also might be a third or another scribe. I don't think it's either of the other two. And I think all of the pentacles are in the same hand because these little faces are all looking very similar to me, which is sort of fun. I would love to have a translation of this so I could really see what all of these are for. There's oh gosh, there's a whole bunch of them. Oh, I like that. It's interesting. All right, I think we're reaching the end of the pentacles, which are great. I don't know how this paper was, it looks like almost like this was painted. Oh, I don't know. This one's interesting. This one has a whole piece of rectangle that's been cut out instead of just the circle. Let's see. That's, yeah, the whole rectangle there was cut out. So I don't know what that might mean, but oh, this is fun. I think it's some kind of defense. Some sort of defending spell. Oh, and now we are at the end of the pentacles, and we go from there to book 2, which has the same kind of title page with the print that's been cut out of some other book and pasted in, and then this colored paper pasted in with the information on it. I didn't say before, but it's sort of interesting that this is a later book, so this is not medieval. This is 18th century, but you don't start seeing title pages in manuscripts until after the 15th century, until after printed books start getting title pages, and then manuscripts, people were still doing manuscripts long after the printing press was popular, started putting them in, because now that's how you do a book, is you put a title page in. So that's sort of interesting. There's a question from Catherine. She says she's wondering if the pasted pentacles replaced poor drawings. I mean, that is entirely possible. That it would explain why they were cut out, why they were cut in circles. I want to do more of a sort of a paleographical analysis to compare and see if these, because if it was done later, then the hand or hands in the pentacles could be different from the other hands. Unless the same person also added the captions when they put them in. I don't know. That's a really interesting suggestion, and it makes some sense. Des says, I was wondering if they were perhaps from another book, that someone wanted to preserve them but also wanted clearer notes. Yeah, now that I'm thinking, like, it could be that they were from somewhere else and that were pasted in, and it's kind of impossible to know for sure. But I love sort of thinking about why somebody might have done this thing that doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense. So we're in the second book, and the first thing, if you remember, the first book, we had an index at the very start. This one doesn't have an index at the start. It does have an index, though. The index is, oh, wow. I actually opened right to it, is at the end. So, but it's the same kind of thing in the same hand. So we've got the same scribe writing both of the indexes. And these are, I didn't have time to really go through and translate these, But whereas the first book seems to be spells, is more about spells, these are more like, on water, there was one I wrote down that's on ravens. So there's a bit on ravens. So I think it's more like things that you might use in spells or things that might be important. Amy says, having the owner's stamp again at the end of book 1 and the beginning of book 2 makes me wonder if these used to be separate and were later bound together. So let's see. What Amy is talking about is here is this owner's mark at the end of the pentacles, so the end of book 1, and then again at the beginning of book 2. It could be. I think it appears in, well, maybe it doesn't because it's at the end here. I wasn't paying attention when I was paging through it how often the stamp shows up, but it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't have been too long because the binding is supposed to be contemporary, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's actually later. I don't know. So here is book 2, and we can take a quick look here. And this hand is much messier than the one in chapter 1. It's messier, but I feel like that's okay. I feel like it suits the topic. Elizabeth says, the on ravens part makes me wonder if it's related to divination based on the flight of ravens. Oh, it could be. I don't know. As I say, I just don't know anything. And Karen Reeds has a bunch of images that could be compared to these. So that might be something good to do. Yeah, I think there's a lot. I think we even have a few more books from this collection that have that. I don't know how much work has been done. I don't know, Amy, do you know how much work has been done on these since we got them or before? I have no idea. So I did want to here further on in this one, another thing that you see in this section that you don't see in this book, you don't see in the first book is sort of strange alphabets, which is a thing. So we actually have another book from the Rainsford collection that is all about different types of alphabets. So people have always been really interested in this. So here we're seeing alphabets, and I don't know what exactly they're doing, but they're sort of neat to look at. Oh, I did not know that this was going to happen. So these are Sequitur Forma Instrumentorum. So it looks like a page about fighting, weapons, blades. Let's see. Yvonne, there were 2 blank pages between the books that would have been part of each book's binding. I think you did. Yeah, I noticed that too. Joyce points out the Elohim in Hebrew. Yes, means God. So there was Elohim written in capitals that I sort of passed over. And that, I think, is maybe one of the instances of this being translated from Hebrew. So they instead of translating it into God or whatever, they kept that. George, I wonder if perhaps the pentacles may have been two-sided, or some of them, since they appear to be done separately. Perhaps cutting the circular window around allowed both sides to be seen in the format. I thought about that, but they just seem to show through. I didn't see that any of them were two-sided, but that would be a good reason to cut the circle out. Yeah, there are definitely some transliterated Hebrew words there. All right, and then we have and we have, I think, maybe more. This might be more of the transliterated Hebrew. I'm not sure. I don't know enough about Hebrew. But these capitals could be more examples of that. We have fire on fire and more of that. There is a lot of, so you're seeing Laudate Dominum, Laudate Dominum. There is a lot of religious Christian language here too. Yeah, Adonai is Hebrew. Water and hyssop, it's used in a purification ritual. Oh, there we go. Right, here we go. Water and hyssop. So this is going to be that purification ritual here. So these are also, so what I said before about this being more about ingredients is not correct. It looks like this is just another set of a different kind of spell, sort of ritual spells. So this is the raven section here. And this is on the taking of the blood from the bat, which is sort of interesting. So how you get a blood from bat, I don't know if that means anything to anyone. Let's see, Des. A lot of the symbols look like they belong in an alchemy reference book. They really do. In fact, I think the other book that I mentioned that has alphabets is, it's actually it's chemical and alchemical alphabets. But I think there's also, it seems like there's a like crossover between it. Like it's not a hard line. There's sort of a soft line and things cross over between magic and alchemy. I am not an expert. This is just from me looking at books. But it seems like that. Let's see. And I think we have another scribe. I haven't been paying attention, but I think, so there might be 3 or 4 scribes working together. And then we're at the end of the second book of the Claviculae Salmonis. And there we go. And we are actually a minute. We still have a minute. So I will come back to the middle. And if there are any sort of final questions, we're happy to answer them. But thank you all for coming. I've been wanting to have an opportunity or an excuse to sit down and take a closer look at this. And so this was really good for me. And I love this collection. This Rainsford collection has a lot of neat stuff in it. So you can expect to see more of the Rainsford collection later on. So now I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you, everyone. And I hope I will see you again soon.